We're gonna have a Kickturn party tonight. All right.
So I'm interested in the rest of the story. When did you bail to LA?
It's still just hard for me to believe that, a kid that grew up in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, some little skateboard kid, actually had the balls to go out to California. And when I landed at Tracker, I was putting lappers and copers into little baggies and stapling them shut. That's where I started at $4.75 an hour. And, 35 years later, here I am sitting running, Eastern Skateboard Supplies.
So we skated your ramp and everything, and we had a good time. And then we got our ramp in our backyard down at Fort Sanders. I just remember you kind of it seemed like there was a whole exodus of East Coast people,
Oh, yeah.
Bob Pribble, Ross Cobb, yourself.
Ray went out there early. Ray was out there.
Ray, everybody, bailed out
Marty
there.
Jimenez, he went out. He's
Jimenez.
out there.
Yeah.
Gary Davis. I mean, lots of folks.
Yeah.
Ryan Ridgway.
And you went out there and you started working a track.
Things in bags and stapling them. And Brian Ridgway informed Larry Balma that he had a guy doing packaging that, could really help somewhere else other than packaging little parts. Tracker had a guarantee department.
You were packaging grommets.
Yeah, whatever they put in front of me. The first guy that was my supervisor at Tracker, his name was Ysidro. And about 4 or 5 days in, the real question was whether I could speak Spanish or not. And once the guys there determined I couldn't speak Spanish, well, they could talk all the shit they wanted on me, and I was like, yeah, whatever, dude. So, and they had this huge mess in their guarantee department with people sending back returns to get replaced and this and that. And
Janie's got stories about that.
I've got a letter somewhere, a receipt where I kept sending back base plates from the 70s, and because I'd break the kingpins, and I would drill out the pivot bushing and put a new school pivot bushing in there. And I kept sending them back, and finally they were like, "No, man, these are definitely not guaranteed for life. Quit sending them back." It worked for like a couple of times, but after that, it was just like, "No, we're not guaranteeing these for anything. You drilled the pivot cup out and all this stuff." So, and somewhere I swear I've got a little pink slip from Tracker, and it's got your name, Joe Bowers, on it.
oh, I wouldn't doubt it. Wouldn't doubt it at all.
Rejection.
Listen, kid, you've got enough of them.
A lot of it was stripped out axles. So then they'd send those back, and they just had to bang out the old axle, put in a new one. Broken kingpins. Now, the ones that were set in the base plates, we didn't replace those. There was no way to do it. But the other ones, you just bang out the old kingpin. And put it. Tracker, it was, the closest other than making clothing of actual real manufacturing. I mean, those guys they got the raw parts, the base plates and the truck hangers, and had to do all the finish on them and then package and ship them. Whereas now, everything comes in from China, and it's a whole different game. So most of the skateboard companies now are just marketing companies. Whereas early on, back there when I first got out to California, it was everybody was still making everything.
After Tracker, now, didn't you do anything with Trendwell Skateboarding Magazine? I know Britt was working there. Did you do anything with them during that time?
For a brief minute, I helped in their accounting department, just filling out ledger sheets and filling in company cards.
Right.
Just with their accounting, doing their accounts receivable.
Right.
But as I was transitioning into doing more of the accounting stuff for Transworld, that's when Larry and Mike McGill and Peggy Cousins and a few other folks, Rex King, they all decided to start Skate Rags Clothing, and they put me on point to be the first employee. So next thing I know, I'm in the clothing industry.
Yeah. Go ahead, Adam.
Where'd you live and what did you skate?
Where did I live? I lived in Oceanside, and I would skate the Shell Bowl locally. There was King's Curb, and then of course we were charging down, and I was working at Del Mar then too. So I'd work at Tracker till 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and then drive down and work at the skateboard park till 11 o'clock at night.
Wow.
So I could skate for free. Really is what that really came down to.
Very cool.
Nice. So that whole Tracker thing Tracker blew up into Rage Industries, which was skate rags, Tracker, Blockhead, Limpies, Fincher Harry. There was like several different things going on there.
Oh yeah, I was part of all that. Larry had some consultants come in and said, "Why are you paying for 3 or 4 separate accounting departments? Why are you which made sense to bring it all into under one one big tent, so to speak. But everybody was in their own separate little companies. We shared accounting department, and that was about it. Till later on, I mean, you came in when I hired you to be a rep for Skate Rags Clothing. That was really towards the tail end of the whole deal.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't know if did you carry the trucks and all that stuff? Did you try to?
Oh yeah, I was all in on the bad axle debacle where you guys sent me a case of trucks and I handed them out to everyone and they immediately started breaking because the axles weren't heat tempered.
Hey.
So everything started breaking.
Was that the quick track?
Yeah, no, the agro track.
Agro.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so it's like, yeah, I'm a state rep. Look, and da da da. And then I gave trucks out to everybody, and all the kids were like, "Your trucks suck." And I was like, "I don't know what happened."
Don't you still have a couple of sets of those, Jay? Like on a
I've got several sets of those, and I have
$800.
Yeah, I've got skate rags still. They're still laying around. I was wearing some skate rags the other day. But I've got some laying around. I've got some that I sold on eBay, and apparently they're still hip in Japan.
That was good stuff. I mean, it was.
It's quality.
The one guy there, Rex King, worked for Ocean Pacific.
Yeah.
And so the deal there was he was still working at OP, and when I started Skate Rags, he would call me up and say, today you got to make the cutting ticket. You got to do this. You got to do this. Take this stuff over to this guy. So I learned the Garmento industry basically through a phone talking to a guy up in LA.
Nice.
Until the company got big enough that he came down, he quit his job there and came down to work at Skate Rags.
So how does this link in with your connection with George Wilson, who we've had on our other episode?
So much later on, and I think George was doing clothing for Alien Workshop. And that's where I reconnected with George Wilson. So it's much even after Tracker and Skate Rags. He was doing some clothing work for us for Alien Workshop. And he came by our booth at the trade show, and then I would talk to him on the phone. And he was working with Slappy, a guy out on the West Coast who was making all of our clothing for us, Chris Sutherland. So that was my reconnect back to George Wilson, which was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, well, when we started talking to him, and he said, "I know Joe Bowers," and I was like, "What?" That was.
So you were at Alien Workshop getting clothes from George Wilson, or he was filling out orders for you.
Right. Well, the clothing industry out in California at that point in time is just wherever you can get stuff made, and George had resources to get certain things put together, and the guy we had out there, Chris Sutherland, he would use whatever he could to get stuff made sometimes, and I think George Wilson was a pretty good connection to get.
I went with Brian to one of the trade shows, and you were like, "Hey, Jay, you want to sell clothes?" And I was like, "I don't know anything about that." And next thing I know, I was traveling around a little bit. And,
so this was like the early mid-90s?
I should have been like 88, 89, maybe.
I guess I'm thinking this was, 89, 90.
Because I remember you were living in the Ramp House still when you had the Limpy Skate Rags Tracker thing.
Yeah. It was nice because they would send me boxes of clothes, and which is what they would send to all the sales reps, especially the people that would actually sell clothes. And I would just wind up with a bunch of clothes.
But yeah, those small time clothing business trying to run with the big boys. Seasonal, holiday, back to school, spring. pre-books, all that
And
stuff.
there's a lot more to it than it seems like on the surface, huh?
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna sell T-shirts and shorts.
Yeah. I didn't have a whole big area. I had Tennessee and Kentucky, and I had a Ford Maverick, and and I had no idea.
1972 Ford Maverick.
And the hayseeds weren't really digging on the skate rags, were they?
Well, you know, when you go into a mall in friggin', you know, Newport, Kentucky, and you try to sell limpies, they weren't really into it very much. You know,
This outfit makes you look like a dog.
it taught me a lot, and I will thank you, Joe, for
The
that.
best thing about that when you came on to being a rep force is you got to come out to one of the national sales meetings. And those were always a lot of fun.
Here is another of my misconceptions about that whole thing, Joe. I thought, you know, if you're a rep for a skateboard company, that you would be a skater or a surfer or something like that. I got out there and sat in those meetings and realized very quickly that these people weren't really surfers or skaters.
No,
They were salesmen.
they were
They were
Industry
hangers on.
exploiters.
They were wannabes. And because I kept going, where can we go skate? Let's go to the skate park. Let's go do this. Let's go do this. And I was so excited. I think you took me at the very last day, you took me to the blockhead ramp that you wound up hitting your elbow, shattering your elbow, and then you kind of chilled out after that. So,
you know, moved out to California, Oceanside, working at Del Mar. And things are really starting to come together for me, really in a nice way. And I was designing a board with Bo Brown. On the night I broke my arm, the guys from Gremic were there. They all came down. And I think Terrence and Lester were there skating as well. So there's like 5 or 6 of us skating the keyhole. And a couple of days before that, I skated a lot with the Graham Stanners and Mark Cheese Hamilton, a couple of guys from Scotland. They showed me the really cool carve line. And it was kind of the Steve Stedham carve line to get a lot of speed to do rock and roll board slides. And so I never carved. I was a flat guy, like vert wall guy. So in half pipe. So the curved wall thing was really difficult for me. And that night I really started figuring out the whole carve thing and was really hauling ass and got the carve line down and did one really, really nice long rock and roll board slide. And the second one I went up on, right where you had to start in the Del Mar keyhole to do this line, the coping was just shredded. It was in really bad shape. And as I went across that, my front foot moved like in a really weird spot up on the nose of my board. But I thinking I could make it, even though my footing was wrong. And I hung up my front truck and ate shit and broke my arm horribly. And I literally, when I landed, it shattered. And then my arm rolled up underneath my body like a rolling pin. When I stood back up, my arm undid itself. It just unspun itself. So I think maybe it spun 3 times under my body. And then when I stood up, it unspun itself. Like, I grabbed my arm up to like this, and I wasn't going to let go. And there was a woman that used to come and skate the Del Mar skate park, mainly the half pipe, who was a roller skater and a nurse. So she said. So she came up to me and she's like, "Oh, you didn't break your arm. You just dislocated your shoulder." No. She's like, "You just need to take your elbow pad off." I'm like, "Hell no. I need somebody to take me to the hospital." And one of the guys that worked there at the park with me, he took me to the hospital. And then, obviously I went there and they discovered it's all shattered and this and that. The next time I saw this guy, Bob, that I worked with, he's like, "Dude, you bled all over my car." I'm like, "Sorry." But I actually had the bone came out of my arm and everything. So
ooh,
Man,
better I didn't take off my elbow pad while I was there.
yeah, no doubt.
But that was right there was the end of my fantasy of getting a pro model.
Everybody's gonna hang out here tonight. All right. We'll pass out in the flat. All right. Tonight. We got nothing better to do than to take 6 runs, drink a dozen brews. Don't talk about started with